Hello, and welcome back to the Becoming Relentless podcast. I am your host, Noa McCabe, and I am joined once again by my lovely co-host, Lexa. And we are here to continue our series, which I am so excited for. So today we are going to get a little bit personal, a little bit vulnerable, and tell you guys what we wish we knew before we started competing. So get ready to understand us a little bit deeper.
Get in our noggins. You want to kick it off? I feel like
Sure. I can absolutely kick it off. So something that I wish that I knew, I don't know why I'm holding the mic like that. Something that I wish I knew before I got started in competing was that the fitness industry is a little culty.
But
There's a little bit of a cult aspect sometimes. And there's this pressure to join the best team, have the best coach, have all of the best supplements, all of the best clothing, the best shoes, the best backpack, the best lifting gear. And you truly don't need all that. You really don't. And I wish, looking back, that somebody would have told me about what I was getting myself into, especially when I made some decisions, because I felt as though I wasn't aware of all of like the detriments. Like all I saw were the potentials. I was like, oh, this has the potential to, elevate my career or take me places as a coach. And looking back and reviewing my experiences, it's like, there were a lot of red flags that I ignored. There were a lot of things that didn't feel congruent that I just brushed aside. And I wonder if people in the industry feel the same way, because I know that my story is not unique. It's not just me. I've heard a lot of similar stories and similar paths that people have gone down, but it's almost like there's this shame around it where people don't want to admit that they have been bamboozled, because it makes you out to be a victim of that coach or team or circumstance, or, like the industry. Like it makes you feel like, oh, I was buying all these supplements. I was spending $300 a month on this magic stack of supplements that was supposed to, get me to be a sponsored athlete, when in reality, you were just one of hundreds of ambassadors for that company. I'm not like naming names or trying to like throw shade in any way, but I do think that having your eyes open and being a little bit more aware and being willing to take outside perspective and feedback could be useful. And I wish that I'd been more open to that, because I do think that I had friends or people close to me like try to say, hey, are you sure that you want to do that? Or are you sure that that's right for you? I was just like, yeah. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But
is there like one specific that you want to go into? Because that's like a very big topic. Like, is there one that you are comfortable speaking on? Also, if not, that's perfectly fine.
I think most specifically, I was told that I wouldn't be successful as a coach or competitor without this singular person in my life. And that could be anybody. So for people listening, like that could be like a coach or a mentor, or maybe even a friend, or like your parents.
Or a partner, if they're helping you take care of you during prep and things like that too.
Like in a relationship, like your partner. I think that in a lot of ways I was made to feel and told that I would be nobody. I would not be a good coach. I would not be a successful competitor without a singular person in my life. And now that I'm like past that, I'm like, wow, what a load of crap. Like, I can't believe that I believed that, but I did. And it was really a turning point for me, especially like with my confidence in who I am, realizing that I don't need anybody but myself. Like, I want people in my life. I want you in my life. I want Zach in my life. There are people in my life that I want, but I don't need y'all to be successful. Like, I'm successful in my own right, in my own skin, like where I'm at today. And I like choose to have great people in my life versus feeling like I have to have Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, what I'm hearing is that the culty part of fitness is the one that makes you feel like you're not enough on your own when that could not be further from the truth. You are the one that gives your coach power. If there is no athlete, there's no coach. We need you. We need coaches. We need like the whole industry to like work together, but that doesn't mean that you are not a powerful force on your own. So anything that's like you'll be so amazing and complete and such a better athlete and a better X and better Y, like I feel like that's always the thing. It's like you can always be better, you can always improve, you can always grow, not acknowledging that you are literally whole, perfect as you are, not in a like a fake self-love way, but just fundamentally like your innate worth is there and nobody is going to give it to you with a backpack, with a team, with any amount of titles. Like these are not needed. These are just like decorations on a very wonderful cake as it already is. I'm hungry if you guys can't tell.
I would love a cake right now.
That sounds bomb.
It does. It does.
J Prime. Let's go.
If you guys are in Austin, J Prime, go order their chocolate cake. I shit you not. It is a slice the size of your head.
It has Matilda vibes. If we are old enough to know Matilda. Yes. I don't know if we're getting past, I don't know if that's just me thing, but.
You guys know Matilda.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope so.
What about, I was going to say, what about you? What is something that you wish that you knew before you started?
Yeah. The one that was probably the most embarrassing for me, everyone listens in a little bit closer. I wish I knew how to lose better, because I think I actually came up in a way that I always had people telling me how great I was, which is, I feel like not everyone has that. And that sounds very like bad saying it out loud, but I always had people like, you just need like the right thing to go pro, or like you just need this one thing, but like you have so much potential and just like more time, more this, more that. And everyone was always kind of saying that I was like too good for like the shows that I was doing. And I it wasn't so much that I like believed that. It was more like, oh, like that would be like really cool, really nice. And then my last show at the Clash in 2021, I got 4th. That felt so bad. That felt awful. And then obviously you have like your little internet warriors that go to bat for you. They're like, you should have won. You looked so good and all of those things. But I wish that I had known what it feels like to be like propped up like that. And then literally it felt like smashed. And obviously like 4th isn't bad, but that was at the time that I was listening to really like hardcore bodybuilding podcasts. And it's like, well, if you can't like win an overall in like a regional show, then like you have no business like competing. Or if you can't win at a regional, you know, it's like all of these like really aggressive, like you're nothing if you can't place better than I just did. So that was really difficult for me, when in fact the girl who beat me went pro at the first national show of the year right after that. So it's like, oh, I was competing with future pros. That's really cool. Now I can see what that looks like. So the next time I go on stage. But in the moment, it was so heartbreaking. I'm getting like a little bit emotional because it is like calling myself out, because people are like, don't be a sore loser or don't be a bad sport. But also like we want to win. So I wish I knew how to lose or like expect it.
Right.
You know, like have a little bit more gratitude for the process, and also like a little bit more stock in the competitors that I was going up against, because everyone was saying like, oh, like, you know, like regionals are nothing, it doesn't matter. But then all of a sudden like nationals are like these big things. And it's like, well, how do you think people get to nationals? They compete at regional shows.
Right. There is like a pipeline. There's a process you have to go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. It is a tough lesson. Like when you've experienced success early on as a competitor, it's such an amazing feeling. And you do get a little bit of that reinforcement from external, where they're like, you're so good, like you're going to go pro so fast, you know? And it's hard, like especially when you're getting into the sport and you're a little bit newer, it's hard to not take that in and think, yeah, they're right. Like I am a winner. Like this is going to be easy. I'm going to go win this show. And I think that it's amazing to have that confidence, and it's something that actually does help you to go in wanting to win. But to your point, like learning how to lose graciously is really hard. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to even admit that, because we are also on the same time, we're told to go win. And then at the same time, we're told, well, if you lose, you have to be a good sport about it. You can't cry. You can't express your emotions. Like you have to be a good sport. And I think that messaging is really difficult, especially if you've not played team sports, if you haven't really experienced losing a lot. your first loss, it's emotionally, it's heartbreaking because you go in after this process of prep, you're very heightened. You want that win. And when you don't get it, oh, it hurts. It really hurts.
Hearing you talk about that, I want to amend it a little bit. I think actually the hardest thing is being placed in general. Like someone saying, you are first place, you are second, you are third, you're fourth, you're last. Because my first show, I won both of my classes. I won the novice and the open. And I also had shame around that. I also had this feeling of, I don't deserve this first place. Like, look at all of these other women. Like there was, I think, like 10 or 12 people in my class or something like that. And they all looked good. And I was just this little like 18-year-old biddy. And I remember like there were some people in my DMs that were like, you shouldn't have won. And then when I didn't win, I had people in my DMs saying I should have won.
Right.
You know? So it's like, I think that the most difficult thing is actually being placed, because at that point, then you are opening yourself up to the subjectivity and to the criteria and to who else shows up in all of those things. So I think being prepared for the number that comes along with competing isn't one that I had. I wasn't really like aware of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that does make sense, actually. It makes a lot of sense. That kind of resonates with me as well. It's like not the fact that you like lost, it's the placement. It can be jarring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In any direction, honestly.
Truly. I think that is important to note, is like the mindset around the win or the loss. Like the win is that you got to stage. Like that's very much my mindset now, is like the win is in the process and in the prep, and getting to stage and stepping on stage is the cherry on top. You did the work. You went through the process. You probably learned a lot about yourself. You overcame a lot of adversity. That's nothing to be like brushed aside. And getting on stage is the win in itself. So no matter what the numerical placing is, hopefully it's not tied to your sense of like self-worth. Because I think I've experienced that, like placing third at North Americans, missing my pro card. I felt like I got last place, when in reality, third at a national show is really, really good. And there's a lot of women who would have loved to be in my position and would have been so grateful. So it's that mindset. And I think sometimes it does take losing. Like we're all gonna lose. You're not gonna win everything. You just can't in this sport. It's really not possible. I've seen, like I have friends, you guys probably know Jordan Fisher. She took 3 shows to go pro. She won an overall, won at nationals, went pro, won her pro debut, went to the Olympia, didn't place at the Olympia. And that's okay. She was at the freaking Olympia. But it's like, I remember when she and I were speaking about it, it was like, that's the first time that she had ever lost. And it was really hard. And then, her second pro season, I think she placed, I don't want to misspeak, but she didn't win the Republic of Texas. And I remember that was like kind of the first pro show loss that she had experienced. And that was also really mentally hard. And so it's like, pick your battles. I feel like I would almost rather lose early in my journey to understand and begin to appreciate moving forward than like get all the way to the top and then experience loss, because that might be, or like your perception of loss, like a different sort of placing. I think that would be really mentally tough. It's all mentally tough. But for me personally, that would be really hard to like win, and then lose.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe like redefining what winning and losing looks like or feels like that isn't tied to the placing that I received. That would have been really helpful if I had done that work. And I'm going to go home and do that work now, because I realized that that would actually be like a really a good thing to dive into.
I think that's why I'm so excited for my pro debut, because I know it doesn't matter where I place. I'm so happy to just be on that stage. Like, I'm like, I can't wait to be on that stage. It doesn't matter where they numerically place me. I'm going to be so happy. And I'm already so happy. So I think if people can kind of cultivate that mindset where the number doesn't matter. It's in the journey that you go through. That's the win.
That's the journey.
It is.
Because you're not done after you get a placing. You're not done with the sport. And it's like, I think that's what a lot of people get tripped up on, is it's the competition itself is not the ending. It's a very small blip, like on the top of Mount Everest. Like there are so many other places that you can go. And even if you don't compete again after maybe like your first show or something like that, like you still have an entire journey ahead of you. There is no end point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's hard. We're very focused on like results or outcome. Like there's a lot of like focus on that. So if we can shift that to, like you're saying, just realizing that it is an everlasting journey. It's just ongoing. It doesn't end. And it's not the result or the outcome. I think that is helpful advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of branches into like my second point of like what I wish I knew getting into competing. And I do think that this is kind of skated over. I hear people kind of talk about it, but not really in like a detailed or like tangible way. So something that I really wish I would have known before I got into competing was how straining it is on your relationships.
Oof.
Yeah. And I think, so people hear it all the time, like, you know, prep is hard on the relationship. Prep is hard on your friendships. And it's sort of a phrase that I think is, again, like thrown around, but not really explored. So like anecdotally from my own experience, there have been numerous times where being in prep has affected my relationship and my friendships negatively. And just acknowledging that like I didn't have it figured out, and I likely still don't. I'm still working on that piece. It's hard for me to admit, but it's also really nice to say out loud. Like it's very relieving to just say, hey, yeah, I don't have it figured out. And this year I'm going to continue to practice and work on improving it. But the aspects of prep that you don't really think about, like the fatigue, like the heavy fatigue, it does affect the way that you interact with your partner. So like, for example, the last prep that I did just last year, it was very, very difficult for Zach and I. We were living together in Buda, and my show date was supposed to be June. When that was taken away, when it was like, okay, we're not going to compete in June, maybe August. That was a really hard time for us because, number one, I had just spent all of this time kind of getting into that mode. I get into like tunnel vision. That's what we called it. And I've talked about it a little bit before, but like Zach and I had a couples counselor. We were seeing a therapist, and we'd been seeing him since like 2020 for help on like gaining tools in our relationship. And even when things were really good and we felt very like confident in our relationship, we would still go to these sessions because it was really helpful to just like have a third party to like really assess, okay, this is like a good time in our relationship. Like what's going so good? What are we doing that is cultivating this, and how can we keep it stable? And prep is something that would always kind of throw a wrench into like our good times, because when I was tired, like I would be so tired. And it wasn't like, oh, honey, like I'm just tired, I'm going to bed. It would be like I could barely speak. I didn't want to speak. Like he would get home from work and I would just be sitting on the couch mute, essentially. Like if I was finishing up work, I would be on my phone finishing up work, and then I would go to bed. And that's really hard for a partner, especially like if you've been with somebody for a long time, or if you're just starting to date. Being able to communicate like how you're feeling when you're in the depths of it is really hard.
Yeah.
Or what it is for me. I don't know if it is for other people, but maybe that's like my weak point right now, or my area of improvement for my preps.
Would you say that your relationships feel kind of cloudy in prep, or do they feel more clear? And I'll add context, I guess, because for me, like I'm thinking back to my very first prep when I was 18, and during that prep, I realized that the person that I was with was not good for me. Like I found more of like my backbone in prep. So that was really clarifying to me. It's like I'm doing all of these crazy things, and I'm not going to get into my like past relationships, but they could not meet me where I was at, and they had no intention of doing so. And it was just so cut and dry, so clear for me to be like, okay, we're not fit for each other. Like, sorry, not sorry. Best of luck on your way. So for me, I had that clarity of like, oh, this actually isn't good for me. It gave me that like self-empowerment because I was doing so much for myself. And it almost sounds like for you, the tunnel vision makes it like there is this like fog around that makes things a little difficult to see. So that's what I'm hearing. I'm curious if that resonates.
Yeah. So I think it's not our first rodeo. Like, so Zach and I have been together, or we were together for like 5.5 years. He was with me for almost all of my preps, like 5 or 6 preps. And he has always been able to like meet me where I'm at. And I think that like going to therapy helped us realize that like, hey, when Noah's like 6 weeks out, like she is in it. She is putting all of her energy towards this one goal. And just both of us knowing that, and almost me having the permission to, I don't want to say isolate, but like really just put all of my focus and energy there and kind of not have to put it into the relationship, because Zach would understand like this is a temporary 6-week period. Post-show, we will repair it. I don't feel like there was ever like cloudiness there. It was very clear that like, hey, this is part of like the process. This is part of what it is to like prep alongside Noah, basically. But I think like in the more recent preps, because I haven't gotten to stage and there hasn't been the switch over into, okay, now this is the recovery phase for our relationship, which is what we call it, because what it would be is like, okay, there's not really a lot of connection, not a lot of like interdependence in the last 6 weeks. Like post-show, we would purposely plan dinners, plan trips, go to the mountains for like a weekend and ski, and it just be us two to like spend the time and energy and like reconnect. I don't feel like we got that last prep. Like it was like, oh no, I'm going to keep going. Like I have to keep prepping and prepping and prepping. And there is no recovery phase for our relationship yet. Like it just kept getting pushed off. And I think that just created a lot of confusion for us. And the communication wasn't quite there. And that's why I say like that's still an area that I'm working on. And I know my example is like very specific to Zach, but I could even say like past preps with my friendships. Like my friends wouldn't necessarily understand that like, oh, like Noah's in her mode. Like she's not going to come out with us. She's not going to respond to group text. Like she's not into it. And then like post show, there would be a little bit of that tension of like, oh, you're back. Like, are you, can we trust that you're going to be a good friend to us now that you're like post show? So I think there's like a communication aspect that just was lacking. And I want to say that it's gotten better, but I'm not sure. Like I'm not entirely sure if it is.
So if you had everything your way and it was a perfect world and we were just like living in Noah land, what would the perfect relationship setup look like for you, where you were still honoring your friends and partners' needs while still taking care of yourself? Like, do you know what that looks like? Do you have an idea of what that could be? Because it's like what we wish we knew. Like, I wish that, or now I can bring this into my current prep, and like I would also be super curious to know.
Yeah. So ideally, I think most of the prep, giving into those friendships, whether it's with your time, your presence, your attention, because I think a lot of the time people think like, oh, I have to go out with my friends and like go out to eat or go out to drink or whatever it is. And it's a little bit sticky when you're in prep. You don't necessarily want to put yourself in that situation. But if you can figure out the ways that feel good for you and feels good for them to spend that time together, whether that is like on a FaceTime or that is like taking a walk and chatting with them or going to the park and like just laying in the grass together. Those sound like really simple, small things, but I think that those small things help reinforce the relationship when like maybe later on in the prep, you might not have the time or energy to do so. So it's almost like setting yourself up and your relationships up for success by like padding them with these little special moments while you still can, like in the prep. So for me personally, like I know 6 weeks out, that is about the mark where it's really hard. Like we're trying to strip that last 5 pounds off. Like my body is down. Like she is just really tired.
She's going through it.
She's going through it. And so that's kind of like the buckle down time for me. But I know that. And so knowing that, up until that point, I'm very intentional with how I cultivate my friendships, how I give into my relationship. And then also like coming out of the show. And I think this is kind of counterintuitive because a lot of the time we encourage our athletes, like, show day is not the end. Like, you still have the reverse diet, like, don't think that prep is over just because you stepped on stage. But in a way, post show, like right when you step off stage, that is a great time to start giving back into your relationships and start rebuilding anything that was maybe like lost. Like if you isolated or if you drew back, it's a perfect time to start making those reconnections because they're going to help support you through the reverse because you do have a little bit more freedom. Yes, you still have to adhere to your diet. You still have to go through the things, treat your body well, like respect your body coming off of, your show, but you will have more energy. You will be able to give a little bit more in. And also, if you can focus on those things, it takes away focus from food. It takes away focus from, oh, I'm still feeling a little restricted. You can go to the movies with your friends. You can go out for coffee. You can do things with them that maybe you couldn't previously do in the thick of it. And so I think framing it that way for yourself, like post-show, coming off of the show and being like, I'm really excited to reconnect with my friends and trying to make it not so food focused. I think that would be my advice is like, don't say like, oh, I can't wait to go out and eat with my friends, but more so, I can't wait to reconnect with my friends. Like, let's have a girls' night. Like everyone come over, let's watch a movie, let's chat. Just setting little things up like that because then you can really repair the relationships and not worry so much about messing up post-show in terms of like diet and all of that.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay. I was like, does that help?
Yeah. I think in my head, I get stuck between two spaces. It's like, well, I really need these 6 weeks. I know ahead of time these 6 weeks are going to be really, really difficult for me. And why don't they just acknowledge that? Like, why don't they just understand it? And then at the same time being like, well, I need to like be a good friend in all of these things. And it just kind of comes down to like, I need to meet my own needs. They need to meet their own. And then we can like kind of reconvene. But the communication aspect is the obviously most important. If you can just let your friends know like, hey, I might need a little bit more support or I might be a little bit quiet, but like, I still love you. I'm still here for you always. Yeah. Just going through the thick of it right now.
I love that you said that because I do think that I'm a little bit maybe different in that regard that like, I don't need the extra support during that 6 weeks. I truly just want to like do me. And that's how I meet my needs. Like the extra support is nice, but then I do start to feel that like, oh, they're, texting me encouraging messages every day. Like I have to respond. And if my friends want to support me, I love that. But I'm able to have that conversation with them beforehand that like, hey, if I don't respond to you in a timely manner, like please don't take it personal. I'm just really focused right now. Like my show is on this day and that is the only thing I'm thinking about. But I love your messages or I love your memes. And that conversation can be hard because sometimes friends don't understand that. But I think at this point in my competing career, I'm very lucky that most of my friends do understand that. So they will, they'll send me memes, they'll send me TikToks, they'll send me something to like get me through cardio, but they don't expect that I'm going to be like, oh, how's your love life? Like, tell me about that date you went on. Yeah. Like, I just don't have that energy in me. And they understand that, which is very nice. And also took a lot of hard conversations because it is hard to tell your friends, hey, like, I might need extra support, but I can't support you back yet. Yeah. It's hard. It's almost like you're asking for more. But I think setting that expectation or also like letting them know that that is what you need or what you don't need. Like for me, I don't need that extra support, but it's nice. But I think some people also maybe feel the opposite. They're like, I need that support. Like, please cheer me on, but I can't respond to you. Like understanding your needs and then communicating that to your friends and getting to that understanding is, I think, what's most important. Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't like to be completely like radio silent, like cut off from people. Even when I'm in like a really difficult spot, I still like to have that little bit of connection. So even if I'm not like initiating the texting, I would still very much appreciate to hear from you and know what's going on and all of those things. So yeah, I can see that we like differ there. But again, like the communication is the most important part.
Yeah. I guess I found myself like last prep, I was almost trying to escape the discomfort by over connecting. So I would be really tired and grumpy and like not present with Zach, but I would be on my phone, like texting my friends or like on Instagram, DMing like constantly because I was trying to escape my like reality. And I'm very much like turned off by that now. Like I'm just like, I want to like fully experience what I'm in almost by myself because I feel like that is where I learn the most about myself. And again, like I don't think everybody's like this and I don't expect everybody to be like this at all. I think that like this is just maybe a personal thing, but I've done that before and I almost like don't want to do that. I almost want to like sit with that discomfort and be okay and know that like I have the strength to get through this and I have my own back kind of thing. Like I don't have to escape my discomfort to get through it. I can just get through it.
Yeah.
I think that's like it's a maybe a mental challenge thing that I'm trying to put myself through.
Maybe because prep isn't challenging enough.
Right. I'm like, why do I feel like David Goggins right now? I'm just like
never finished.
Literally, I'm like, wow, I sound a little hardcore right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Did you have one more?
I did.
Do you want to say it? We have time. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just go for it.
Awesome. The last thing that I wish I knew, and this is like where my woo-woo stuff kind of comes in, I wish I actually knew how deep prep was. Because I think everyone on Instagram talks about, you know, like the dedication and, you know, never finished David Goggins and all of these like really, it's so deep, but we're all going to stay the surface level of like what the depth actually is. I wish I knew what that looked like because the more that I'm really interested in like somatics and I'm really interested in energetics and yoga and all of those pieces and kind of learning about how our bodies perceive what we're doing in this world. I wish I had understood the depth of what prep does to the body from a perspective of when you're looking at your body like it's another being. So it's like we're literally like starving it. Like how does it feel about that? And even in the like spiritual traditions, like you would withhold food, like you would fast for like a month to, you know, get to like higher realms or all of those things. And it's like, oh, a lot of people are doing something very, very similar without knowing that's what they're doing. And then all of these weird things start to come up. And it's like, why do I hate myself? It's like, whoa, interesting. Interesting that this is coming up when this like little security blanket of food is taken away. And it is so much deeper than just doing cardio, getting your steps in, going to the gym, having a little bit less food. Like it does bring up quite a few different things, at least in me, it has. And I felt kind of crazy going through some of those things. It's like, why are these things coming up? Like, why is everything all of a sudden so serious? Why am I having all of these somatic symptoms like anxiety, just like feeling a little depressy? Like, why are these things coming up? And it's like, oh, it's just exacerbating what's already there. And being able to handle that and also being prepared of what could come up, not just from like, oh, like your hormones are going to be a little dysregulated and you might not get enough sleep and you're a little under recovered. Like I wish I knew some of the energetic components behind that other people have already experienced doing something very adjacent to what we're doing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like that a lot. I think that could honestly just be a whole podcast in itself, like exploring the different, I don't even want to say it's almost like levels.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy for us to, and that's why we see it on Instagram, it's really easy to package it as like prep is hard because you're dieting and you're doing cardio and you're going to be tired and your hormones are going to be whacked. But there's so much underneath that.
Yeah.
And for me, like with PEDs, like anabolics, like I always wonder, how is this changing the way that I think and operate, or is it just bringing to surface like traits that are already within me? Like, am I an impatient person or am I an aggressive person, or is it the PEDs? And like exploring that from a different lens, like not just here's the mechanism of action, here's what it's doing, but like here's the experience that I'm having. Like this is what's happening within my body, and like energetically, what does it mean? Like what is underneath that? I think could be really fun to explore.
That could. Yeah. I know we're like running out of time, and that's like a deep one to like end
Right.
with. I was like, we're going to end with this one. That was not smart.
I'm
but
like, we're kind of opening the can, it's like
Yeah.
a slight bend of the lid.
maybe
but
we'll do that one for another one or
Yeah,
something. But
yeah.
yeah, for me, just realizing how deep it can go, and not just casting it off as like prep being hard, but it actually bringing up things that I probably wouldn't have had the experience or the opportunity to look into otherwise if I didn't prep. So being able to look at it from that perspective of like, what can I learn about myself? Like, what is this prep going to teach me, or what is it going to show me, instead of trying to avoid all of those things, like trying to avoid the hunger, trying to avoid the anxiety, the depression, the fear, like all of the things that are coming up in me in response to this prep I was doing. I wish I had been able to sit with them a little bit better, instead of just trying to do everything I could and just volume eat 1 billion pounds of cauliflower to make it go away. Like, I wish that I had had someone be like, okay, like this is some stuff that could come up, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to chat through it whenever it comes up, just so you know you're not crazy. Like, that would have been super helpful. Yeah. So if you do experience any of those things, you're not crazy, and our DMs are open.
Yeah, absolutely. Always.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's a good note to end on. Now we have like a sneaky little topic for the future.
Yeah. We'll chat. We'll figure it out.
Oh, yay. I hope that you guys got as much value out of this as I did. I feel like this was really fun. We got to dive deep a little bit more and give you an insight into experience that we have had, and maybe they resonate with you. Maybe they don't, and that's okay. I would love to hear any feedback, thoughts, questions. If you want to talk through anything, like Lexa said, our DMs are open. Our information will be linked below. If you could like, share, subscribe, send this podcast to a friend, I would really, really appreciate that. I have so many exciting things coming, so keep tuning in. Keep being special, because all of you guys, I love y'all. And yeah, until next time, stay relentless.